Like I said, I went through Catholic schools. I attended Methodist services, member of St. Luke United Methodist Enterprise, Alabama. And I don't remember ever having a conversation about the death penalty before this all began. I don't remember discussing it in a class or in a Sunday school class or hearing it talked about from a pulpit. I have no conscious recollection of that. Like I've told groups before, maybe it was covered in a class. Maybe I slept through the class. I don't advocate that. But I have no conscious recollection. I mean, I was, at least I thought I was, a reasonably intelligent human being at that point in time. But I never thought about the death penalty. I knew there was one, but I never thought about it. And no one ever came up to me and said, Mr. White, where do you stand on the death penalty? And I'm kind of ashamed to say this, because my response at that point of time probably would have been, gosh, I'm busy. Well, I'm a good American, and it's the law of the land. It must be okay. Thank you for asking. Now, I would hope, if that had happened and that fellow had gotten out of my office, that I would have paused and reflected upon it and thought about it. And ultimately come to the same conclusion that I stand before you today. Now I am absolutely opposed to the death penalty in every circumstance, for every reason. However, it hasn't always been so, because from the moment Shar and I were shot, and for a long time afterwards, I absolutely supported it. Not every murder victim family member goes to hatred, but I did. I did. I hated not only the man that murdered my wife, but as I told a newspaper reporter a couple of days ago, I had this whole long list of folks within the system that failed me. My list got real long. And for more than 7 years, I had a love-hate relationship with my God. I hated him. And as I came to understand, he kept on loving me. Talk about loving the unlovable. I believe cursing your God ranks up there about number 1 on that list of thou shalt nots. My hatred was all-encompassing. I was a hating man, an angry man, a bitter man, a hurting man. And as I've told folks before, those emotions, folks, the anger, the desire for revenge and retribution, are normal, valid human responses. We are entitled to our feelings, folks, whatever they are. We are entitled to them. However, there's a big difference between feeling and doing. At least there better be. I don't know about anybody else, but as I've just shared with you, I've been filled with some powerful emotions. But I'm not the only one that gets filled with powerful emotions. And at times, those emotions sometimes cut off the blood supply to the head. It has nothing to do with thinking. Nothing at all. Nothing at all. Now, I was asked by one of the television crews out there, what was your defining moment? Well, like I told him, I wasn't struck by some bolt of lightning on some road somewhere. I was deeply troubled by how I felt, by the way. I mean, I was raised a Christian. And first, I tried to validate my support for the death penalty by going to the good book. And I'm often confused by things that I run across in the scriptures. I mean, after all, it says an eye for an eye in there, doesn't it? Yeah, at least 3 times in the Old Testament. But you know, when I'm most confused, I tend to look more closely at the words of the Master. I think it's Matthew chapter 5. And Jesus said, "Ye have heard it said, an eye for an eye. But I say to you, love your enemies." Oh, God, please. I started today. I started to look at the death penalty every way I could. I'm going to find some way to hold on to this. Helen has a way of putting it that the support for the death penalty in this country is a mile wide, but it's only 1 inch deep. And what Helen means by that is most of us have never examined it below the surface. Most of us, and I was one of those, most of the information I had about the death penalty came from newspapers or 30-second sound bites on television. Not to say you can't get good information, but what about the depth of it? It took me about 45 minutes after I gathered the data on the death penalty and the cost to go, whoa, as a good fiscal conservative, there's no way that I can support this. Glad to dig deep on that one if you want to. I'm more comfortable on a blackboard with numbers sometimes than I am sharing what I'm sharing with you right now. I went down the list, folks. Ultimately, bottom line, the death penalty is bad public policy. Deterrence, often suggested as a valid reason to continue the death penalty. Let me personalize that one, folks. 10 days before Shar and I were shot, 100 miles away in the state of Georgia, a highly publicized execution. Did it deter the man that murdered my wife? No. Why? Well, folks, let me suggest to you something. For decent folks like you and I, the threat of 1 day in jail is deterrence. The folks that commit these horrible abominations, I suggest, are not operating on the same value systems we are. Think about this one. It is not the severity of the punishment that has any deterrent value at all, if any. It is the certainty you're going to be held accountable. Food for thought. All the way down the list, folks. All the way. Ultimately, I found that the only thing that I could grab onto was vengeance. I still have angry days to this day. I'm entitled to those. Certainly. Let us never deny the validity of the feelings. But let us always affirm that we all get by with a whole lot of help from our friends when we're not thinking. We need our friends, our community, our society to come put their arms around us, affirm how we feel, but help us come back to thinking. No amount of retaliatory violence will heal the wounds of our loss. What began with this horrible act of violence should not be memorialized by an act of vengeance. There is better ways. We must choose to find them. Do I have all the answers? No. No, I don't. I'm no longer willing to debate the death penalty. That's about winning and losing. Let's dialogue. Let's talk. Let us, in the words of St. Paul, reason together. I think the message is there is don't leave your brain at the door. Let's